everybody. It's Pastor Chris Mays here, and during the year of 2023, we've been celebrating our 50th anniversary of a church. New Life Fellowship was founded in 1973, and we've been ministering in the community ever since. And during this year, I've been taking some time to interview some people that have been at the church for varying lengths of time, just to get some stories to remember, to celebrate some things that have happened, and to just talk about God's faithfulness and look forward to what He wants to do. So tonight, I'm honored to be joined by Robert and Mary Ann Steinbock. Hi guys, thanks for being here. Appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. You came all the way from Florida just to sit for an interview.
Just for this.
So I guess the first thing is, tell me a little bit about how long you've been attending New Life and what was going on in your lives when you first came to the church.
Well, I'll go first.
Okay.
I was 13 years old when my parents got divorced. And my sister came to the Lord and came to the church here. And I actually met some people in the park that brought me to Jesus, and I started going to their thing, and I didn't really like it. They didn't like the church. They were kind of like a anti-church kind of Christians.
The whole we're following Jesus, but we don't need the church.
Right.
Okay.
The church is corrupt.
Yeah.
But, you can understand that based on some of the mainline churches that we've seen. Anyway, my sister brought me here, and I know God told me this was the right place. I just felt that peace and knew it was the right place to come.
Okay. And what, am I allowed to ask what year that was? Because somebody might do the math. You said you were 13. They might figure out how old you are.
Well, I was right at my 14th birthday, 1975.
Okay, so 75. So you've been here 48 years. Wow, you've seen a lot of the history of the church.
I've seen most of it.
Okay, I think the only person that I've interviewed this year that's been here longer than you was probably my mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
She was here.
She was here when
You were
came.
too. You were just a little rock there.
I've got some memories. I remember you coming. We'll get into that some more, I think. I remember you being up the street from us.
Right. I used to come up to your house and play Scrabble with you and your mom.
Yep.
And it's documented because I still have some of the top scores in the Scrabble box.
We would write down anytime one of us made a 7-letter word, and Robert's name is still on the list at Mom's house several places.
He still plays that.
So, Mary Ann, you came a little bit later than Robert. So how did you arrive at New Life, and what was going on in your life at the time?
I came in 1982.
Okay.
I had a couple friends that were coming, and they kept inviting me, and I finally came. And we had a guest speaker from Africa.
Christoffel Dutoit.
Yeah. Okay.
I was out at Moon Church with Jim Barrett, and just it all happened that Sunday. Just
So your first
God
visit
saved everything.
was a guest minister from another country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I cried for about 4 days nonstop after that, and then just the big change in my life.
So you really noticed the difference of I was like this before, and then I met Jesus, and I was different afterwards.
Yes.
Wow. So in the short abbreviated version, obviously you guys met at church. Do you want to share any of that story or how that happened? Or
Well, I was in Moon.
And I was in Carnegie, and they had a New Year's Eve party in Moon. And somebody invited me and Steve to come out to that party, Steve Jones. And there was this girl with really long hair that I took a little fancy to, and got her phone number, and a couple weeks later we started talking, and we always say that we got the two youth or the young adults from the churches together, and that was a way for us to date without
hanging out in a big group, but we're really there to see each other.
That's if I'm honest about it. Well, we always tease about that because after,
It was the trip to the museum that did it.
yes.
Oh, okay. And you got married in the church? Where? I don't remember. I'm sure I was there, but I don't remember
Pastor
all
Jim
the details.
and Pastor Dudley both married us.
Okay, so they did like a joint officiant thing.
Yep.
Yeah, they're both were important to us, so I decided that I wanted both.
And then I went from the Moon Church to the Carnegie Church.
Okay, you followed Robert back to Carnegie.
my husband.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
When you first came to the church, besides seeing Mary Ann and being smitten, when you first
That was like 8 years later.
8 years later,
It was,
okay.
nine-
So before that, when you first came to the church, who were some of the people you remember? Like, who made an impact in your life? Who are some of the people that stick out that you first talked to, or they first talked to you, made you feel welcomed?
Mitch and Suzanne Nace. They were the people that just welcomed everybody, and they were everybody's friend, and they just really helped to get me connected, and just all the years of love that they poured into us. It's just him teaching and her, just all the love from them has been great.
That's awesome.
I remember Marianne was an adult,
Right.
with a real job and everything. I was a freshman in high school, so I guess we went into a children or a high school home study kind of thing.
Okay.
Jack McKenzie was leading that, and I got to meet some friends. That's who I started being with. We had 17 people that used to eat lunch together at Chartiers Valley High School.
Okay.
So for that freshman year, it was a real thing that Christians all getting together and eating lunch
Did they all
together.
come to church in New Life? Most of them?
Probably 6 or 7 of them.
Okay.
But
So
Obviously, God was doing something because there was a revival happening at the school district. I remember my dad sharing stories about his workplace and people getting saved all over. So you kind of got swept in through Jesus really bringing revival to the community.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And after a year, that kind of broke up, and I ended up going to Bible study at your house.
okay.
So your dad really became like another father for me. I got along great with my dad, but I learned so much from Pastor Dudley.
Yeah.
And really, I've always been a serious person. Mary Ann always says I was born 10 years old. But really, how he dealt with people, he taught me about like not counseling women alone, and how to protect yourself from things. And that really made a big impact on my life.
Okay. So just the godly
Just
wisdom.
Godly wisdom and being able to stay straight for 50 years.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I know Dad would appreciate just seeing the man of God you've become over the years. Even I know he, up until 15 years ago, he was still with us, but
Right.
even since then, he would just love to see what you guys have been up to and how God's just blessed you and prospered you.
Yeah, Pastor Dudley really did impact my life.
Yeah.
That season when I was worship leading, and he was pastor, and he really encouraged me. I remember during the time when my dad was sick and died, and it was about almost a 2-year time frame, and the way he encouraged me to just continue in the ministry throughout all of that, and there was such a strength there that he imparted to me, and he would always just spur me on with my songwriting and just the freedom of worship and that we enjoy at New Life Fellowship. So much of the seeds your dad planted and got into the culture of the church with their worship. It's awesome.
I think that's part of our DNA at New Life is that spirit of worship and just His presence that comes. And man, that's awesome to hear. I just knowing seeing Dad from my side of things as the head of our family and my father, like it was pretty cool to see just his love for Jesus, his love for the church. I never got rattled, but as you're saying about him encouraging you, I can just hear. I've had so many people tell me, "Your dad told me you've got the goods."
Yes, got the goods.
Got the goods.
I have it later on the questions, but since we're talking about Dad, is there like a funny story or something that comes to your mind that people would say, "Oh, that's Pastor Dudley"?
There's the real funny story. I have
big one.
several that I thought of.
There's the obvious one.
Yeah, we'll tell that one. It's a little bit long, but
You can abbreviate it.
yeah, it's a woman came to the church.
Okay.
Her name was Ruth, and Mary Ann and I were about 2 weeks from getting married,
Okay.
and we were thinking about marriage, honeymoon, all those things, and we went out.
Ruth was a good distraction.
Yes,
Okay.
that's why I probably brought her into our life. And we
She
saw
got
her.
saved.
Okay.
I stuck a track in her booze bottle up at Great Southern Shopping Center, and then she showed up in church the next Sunday and got saved.
You were the one, the lady said an angel appeared
Yes.
and gave me this.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was the angel.
I think she was looking down, didn't really, she was very tough
Yeah.
woman. And so Marianne, she came to
And we had
church.
listened to them the whole time we were having lunch in this restaurant. They were the table over, and we could get a real flavor for where the dark place she was in.
Okay.
So
So-
God had me put that track in her
Yes.
booze bag.
So she's up at giving testimony, and that angel appeared. And Marianne's like, hey, that was me.
So she showed up at the church the following week
Yes.
and gave her
And
life
so
to Christ.
and then she was at our apartment
Okay.
visiting often. We spent a lot of time with her.
Yeah, she came the one night, and she was real upset.
Road rage.
And she said, oh, I had this road rage, and this guy was doing this, and I took out my gun, I shot it in the air. I'm like, oh man, you shouldn't be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit apprehensive, but we let her in, and we're talking, and really I did not know how to handle it. So, run over, called Dudley. Hey Dud, this woman's here, baby Ruth, and I don't really know how to handle it. Could you please come over? I mean, she's got a gun, and
No, you didn't say that.
I did tell him
did you?
that.
Okay.
And so he comes over, and he's sitting across from her, and she's really kind of going to town, talking to her, admonishing her, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden she says, oh, okay, I guess I can empty this now. And she pulls out the gun. She starts emptying the cylinders. And Pastor Dudley, his jaw just hit the floor. I mean, if you ever hear that expression that their jaw hit the floor, that was the moment. And he never let me forget that, because he said I'd never said anything about the gun.
Even
And
though
I know I did.
think you did. Yeah.
But, he just got in there, and the Holy Spirit's moving, and
telling her you need to repent, and then she's
So
got a loaded
God
gun.
protected all of us that night.
yes.
And we still got married.
Are we going to?
We made our wedding.
Oh, that's great. I'm not even going to ask him, because I'm sure we would just spend the rest of the night talking about him if I asked for any dad on the golf course stories. 'Cause-
I have one.
Okay, we'll
just
do
a short
one then.
one. Because in golf, there's a thing that if you're swinging, if you lift your head, you're going to hit that shot, just a real short 20 feet shot. So he put his hand on my head, almost like he was praying for me.
Yeah.
He said, keep your head down. And I still think of that every time I golf. If I'm starting to do that, I picture Dudley putting his hands on my head. Keep your head down.
That's awesome.
Memorable life lessons
Yes.
are few and far between sometimes. And just to have something that tangible and that real that you still remember. Oh, that's so cool. Go ahead, Robert.
Oh wait, I have one more.
Oh, yeah. One more. Okay.
One more. So
Well, you
I
can
think
always
I
edit
was,
some
I
of
was
these.
driving. I think it was Hickory Heights Golf Course, and I was driving, and he was in my cart, and Hickory Heights has all these dunes.
Okay.
And I took off real fast in the golf cart, going over the dunes, and
Kinda
like a
Kenny
roller
Road.
coaster. And I don't think he ever forgot that.
You didn't roll him out of the cart,
No,
did you?
like almost.
Because I
but-
feel like somebody else did that to him once.
Yeah, it was memorable.
Yeah, I appreciated all the times I spent on the golf course, and I miss him. And one thing about that is, on the golf course, I still honor him today. Even today, or was it the other day, I always give testimony about how, well, he was like the least liked person at PennDOT. And when Jesus saved him, they had a revival where almost every person
Yeah.
gave their heart to Jesus because they saw such a change.
Yep.
Like, how could God save Dudley Mays?
Yeah.
And he did, and
Yeah.
he really changed. And I still use that testimony. I think he got to be happy up there in heaven, thinking, "All right, a testimony using my name." And so our testimonies
Yeah.
can go on even
Yep.
beyond our own life.
I think so. There's,
And you do remember every time you putt when he said, "Robert,
Oh yeah,
do you inhale or exhale when you?"
yeah. He did that.
and you
to
missed
me.
the putt, didn't you?
No, I made the.
You
putt.
made it? Oh, he missed it later.
And then later on, he had a birdie putt, and he gets over it, and I say, "Hey, Dudley, do you breathe in or out when you putt?" And he missed it.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
he was not really a happy camper, but you know.
That was not a Pastor Dudley moment. That was just
no,
Dudley.
It was a funny moment.
Well, I know you mentioned a couple things of wisdom that were imparted to your lives, but thinking across the whole time that you've been at New Life, what are like one or two key things that you learned during your time at New Life that really helped you grow as a Christian in your walk with God, become a better person? What are some principles maybe that you learned over the years?
Faithfulness. I think that I was that kind of person to start with, but you know, everything really comes back down to being faithful and holding your own row, as Dudley used to like to say. But I was just thinking like about funny stories or whatever, and really, once we had children, I think my life was just work, which wasn't 40 hours a week. I taught Sunday school, was in the band, you know, supporting Mary Ann full-time in the band. And, you know, it was just like keeping faithful, just working hard, keeping your nose to the ground. And I don't know, those were really a lot of the happiest years of my life, even though it was not like much time to reflect on that.
When you're talking, the first picture I have is Jesus talking about somebody that puts their hand to the plow and doesn't look left or right or look back, but I'm doing this.
Right.
I'm going to keep doing it and be faithful. That's awesome. I definitely see that in your life. How about you, Mary Ann? What are any nuggets that you've learned over the years that especially stand out?
Well, that we have a choice, and we can, a lot of it, having that Christian attitude, the fruit of the Spirit, we can choose to forgive, we can choose to love, we can choose joy, we can choose trusting. It's really just a daily walk of choosing Christ and choosing His ways to walk in the peaceful happiness that He intended for us. And also the love that's here.
Okay.
Always felt loved.
That's awesome. The power of the daily choice, and then just the atmosphere of love to grow in.
I see her telling people that at least twice a month. Somebody new,
Yeah.
you know, about choosing joy, and that's a choice you make. It's not everything in life is easy,
Yeah.
and a lot of situations are very hard. But having that joy, it's a choice,
Yeah.
and it makes things go a lot better too.
People can take away a lot of stuff from you, but they can't take away your power to choose how you're going to respond in any situation.
Right.
So that's good. I was just thinking about, aside from Ruth not shooting you, is there another significant testimony or something that stands out in your mind that over the years you're just like, wow, did you see what God did in that moment or that person's life, or how He moved? Is there anything that stands out to you?
They roll into, I don't know. I've seen so many things, seen people healed, I've seen people recovered, I've seen miracles, I've seen how God can take time in a person. And one of my better friends here that, you know, I'm sure wouldn't mind me talking about it, but it took a while for God to deliver him from alcoholism.
Yeah.
And, you know, every time something good would happen, you know, there was a failure. But God was not, you know, God did not leave him, and we were there to support him. And the last 20 years of his life, he never had a drop of alcohol.
Wow.
And he lived it, it was just such a miracle. It wasn't like instantaneous, but it was one of the most overcoming things I've seen from somebody.
Okay.
You've seen both ends, like the instantaneous, God healed this person and did this thing that was miraculous, but then he also didn't desert them over the long haul when they needed help walking and changing their life.
Right.
Okay. How about you, Mary Ann? Anything come to mind aside from that?
Well, I think for me, I'll share a personal side of that. So being the worship leader for the season that I was a very supernatural thing, because, and I'm not just being modest when I say this, but I really feel like this is how I am. Mediocre singer, mediocre musician, self-taught, never studied, just very basic, learning guitar, learning keyboard on the stage while I'm playing on the worship team. Not professional, not self-taught or not studied. And for God to pick me to do what I did those years still blows my mind when I think about it, because it was never, and Robert will tell you, it was never my talent, because I feel like on the talent scale, it wasn't that high, it was enough.
Yeah.
I was enough, and I was willing. But God really showed up and just used me and went through me. And I think it's just a miraculous thing. It was just miraculous.
You said the word willing. Isn't that a key of we just make ourselves available?
Make yourself available.
Yeah.
And I was the person as a young adult couldn't talk in front of people. I would be sick. So to get up on stage and sing and lead, and that was huge.
Wow.
And but there was really special seasons there.
And she hates when I say it, but I always said she was one of the best worship leaders I could be. And I mean that time when she was the worship leader, maybe it was other things, but yes, the anointing on our worship services were just unbelievable.
Yep.
And not because you just
it's not that they're not anointed or they haven't been since I was leading. They are, and it continues to grow and blossom. It's just beautiful, and it was before me too. But for me personally, that was a huge thing that I saw God do.
And almost what you're describing is like Paul writing about, in my weakness, he is strong.
Right.
And it's like recognizing, okay, God, I'm offering what I have, and he comes in and makes up the difference and strengthens us in that moment. Yeah. That's good.
And we had joy in those situations too on the worship team. And one of the keys of New Life Fellowship, and maybe we don't like to admit it, is that we're like big Steeler fans. And we were going to the Super Bowl. We were all dressed up. There's pictures in the 40-year anniversary of Mary Ann with the Steeler thing around her neck. And so we get up there. We had permission, and so she starts off the song like, "Here we go." That music and the people in the congregation, they were looking like, what in the world is Mary Ann doing? But she wrote Christian words to it. Like, here we go, Christian.
Taking the gospel to and fro.
And it was like a great hit. It was so fun and so funny, to do something like that.
Yeah.
We had the freedom to do that. That was great.
Yeah, and it connects with people too. So that's awesome.
I'm just, you don't know how many times people that are still in the church that remember will tell me about singing "I'm a Hog for You, Jesus."
Oh yeah.
Or I'll have another drink that Dad really gave a lot of liberty and had a lot of fun during worship as well. So,
we love that.
I know that Dad wasn't perfect. I know that we're definitely not perfect. So over the years, if you've been in any church for 40 some years, you've seen your share of bumps in the road and had opportunities to get offended or to get upset. But what is it that helped you overcome those bumps in the road, kept you planted here, kept you coming back? What are some of the secrets to that?
Well, I think that we had grown to like 400 or 500 people. We had this kind of a church kind of split thing. And I remember I was just still in high school. And I'm thinking like, well, what should I do? And nobody really kind of confronted me or talked to me or anything. But I know God just spoke to me. And he said, you're to be a pillar in this church. As a matter of fact, Rita Fidel prophesied that over me, and I was like, well, yeah.
You had already heard God say it.
God say
spoke
that.
Wow.
But it was like, don't leave the church.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to stay and help fix whatever would be there.
Yeah.
And not that anybody was really asking an opinion of this teenager either.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that was there right from the beginning of, being faithful to the church.
Yeah.
So.
You did become a pillar. You remained, and I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the math off the top of my head, but you were an elder in the church for 20-some years.
1997.
Okay,
1997.
I'm trying to do math now in my head on the fly while we're recording.
Over 20 years.
Over
25.
20 years.
23.
So, I mean, like, that really is, I would say, the definition of a pillar in the church. Is not only was I just attending for 48 years, but I led and I loved on people. I helped other people grow, and that's an amazing testimony. Yeah. What about you? I'm because sometimes we forget, like, even in a marriage, we're two different people, even though God's made us one, and the reasons Robert stayed or worked through things may not be the same as you, or maybe he may have just said, hey, we're just going to stay, and you said, okay, but I'm imagining there are some things that you processed as well, or things that you had to deal with.
Yeah, it was never like any little things that would happen specifically, but it was, again, walking out your walk and following the leading of the Holy Spirit and knowing your place in the body and your function, what body part you are, and functioning in that, and just being faithful to that. You get over things.
Yeah.
Things are with other people, and you just, you walk out the Christian walk of, talking and then forgiving, and then moving on,
Man, if more of us would just realize the power of just having a conversation and forgiving, it would be amazing.
We haven't always been forgiven, and people have left, but we've always tried to forgive and try to be peacemakers.
I had a pastor friend recently, he told me that irritation is the sign that you're part of a family. Because the people we get the most irritated with sometimes are those we're in closest relationship with.
Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, so why would we not expect that that's going to happen in the life of a church also? But just like you shouldn't pack up and leave your natural family, why would you pack up and leave your spiritual family? Like, hey, we're going to work through this even though I've had these things come into my life.
Sure. And we led a Bible group for 25 years. Maybe a little longer, and that taught us a lot about being faithful and ministering, pastoring, our people that are underneath, who God's asked us to help care for.
Yeah.
I was always faithful to not cut people away from the church, but always to lead people to Jesus and to support the pastor.
Yeah.
Because I've always known how that is. I think a big transition was when Dudley died. And there was that time before he died that he couldn't perform. And you were still
Out of town.
an engineer. And Steve Mack and I basically were the pastors of the church for a year.
Yeah.
And that can cause a lot of trouble. But both him and I were working a lot. I don't know how we did it. I really don't. But we were there. I think Steve probably even more than me. But we worked together and kept it together. And we were both so relieved when he got here. And here's
Yeah.
your church, but here's the church, so that we could kind of get back to maybe a little bit less.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, churches can break up in a transition like that.
Yeah.
And New Life is very fortunate that you came and that you had the vision of your dad, and that things have progressed.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it other than there is a weight to it, like just being an elder or being the pastor, leading people, being responsible for other people. Like there really is something that you feel. Jesus' yoke is easy and it's light, but there's like a weight or a burden that comes on your heart, I think, of like, oh, I need to be responsible and be faithful, like you talked about.
You need to be like a father
Yeah.
and a mother, where you have your brood and you're trying to teach them how to be responsible and grow up and fly the nest.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how most people get there eventually, and some people are real quick and some people aren't. I know that in my own life, I was in with the adults from about the time I was 14.
Because you were born 10 years older.
Yeah.
He was born at 10.
Steve Jones, Fred Jones, and I, like, we were all with the adults, and we were still in high school until my senior year, and then they decided to have a high school class.
So they sent you
He
back
was
to the high
demoted.
schoolers.
I was demoted, but I did it willingly and with a good heart, and because I understand what the good was for the others.
Yeah.
But, I always had responsibility, like right away, and then the philosophy of the church was, well, when God makes you, when you grow, you get the responsibilities, right? So, I thought the Bible study that we had at your dad's house, or your house, it ended when I was a senior in high school. And there's some pictures that I sent for that, but all the adults in that group were made home group leaders, except for me.
Oh.
And
He was
I think,
17.
and I thought I was a little bit upset about that, but it was the most smart decision ever.
Yeah.
I wasn't really ready for anything like that. I was a young whippersnapper.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
They waited till you were married a year.
yeah.
You straightened them out.
Well, just you get a lot more wisdom.
I think there's a reason that it equates wisdom with gray hair.
Yeah.
Like there is something about just having time and seeing how things work and seeing God come through and be faithful and seeing how you grow in circumstances. So it probably is wise to say, hey, we're just going to wait, let you grow a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you graduate high school, at least.
Once you graduate high school, you're ready. Well, thinking about the things that have kept you at New Life for 50 years, 48 years, less than that, because Marianne's much younger. If you were going to give some nuggets of advice or some wisdom to somebody that, maybe they've only been at the church 5 years, but they got 50 years ahead of them to be part of the family or to stay and work through things, what advice would you give somebody to get the most out of their time at New Life, or their most out of their time as a church family and being in it for the long haul?
Serve. I thought always, I moved 50 families. I don't know how many exactly, but we've worked in the food bank, the clothing room, moved chairs, moved pianos, moved, gone and helped. I assisted one of the guys one time helping some lady with her plumbing, and right away we were just in my life it was service, and there's not much a young man can do, but he can always use his muscles and serve and be with the other men and be involved. I was here, I was looking at like 6 nights a week. I was involved in something in the church. So, that got me involved, and you have relationships, and some of the men are meeting tonight, and I've known them for 40 years, right? And been friends, and, not that we've all been best friends or see each other all the time, but there's those relationships. And those relationships grow by being together doing things together, praying together, just
Yep.
everything in life. And that makes a church
Yeah.
body, I think.
I love that thought of serving, because it's hard to be critical of something that you're involved in and have given your heart and your hands to. Like at least that's my experience. Maybe it's been yours. I find that the people that are the loudest critics, you find out they're the ones not doing anything, and it's like, oh, maybe if we just served, we would grow a little more and make those relationships and have less to criticize. So.
Do you have anything on that?
Yeah, what about you, Marianne, if you're giving somebody some advice for the next 50 years?
I think two things came to mind. Just the process of growth and how exciting it is to watch something grow. Like if you have a new plant or seeds and you're watching it, and it's just, you have to be there to see it, to notice the growth and to be experiencing the growth. So sticking it out, if you leave, you're going to miss out on what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And to have that joy and expectation, excitement about what God's going to do as you listen to the prophecies over the church, will stick around and watch that come to pass.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like living in anticipation and excitement and expectancy.
One of the things that we did quite often earlier in the church was go to lunch after church.
Those are some of my favorite memories as a kid.
Yeah.
Sunday afternoons at Bonanza.
Yeah, Bonanza or Ponderosa
yep.
in Heidelberg.
And the one thing Dudley taught us there was to take a soup bowl for the dessert.
Yes, for ice cream.
We still do that to this day.
Yes.
But the other funny pastor,
That is such a dad move.
that I thought comes up with this, and it's, you know, because I was thinking of funny stories, was I know Dudley used to tape all the Steeler games every Sunday, right? And then play them back after church. Well, I was young and I didn't really realize how important it was to him. and the Steelers were winning like 24-3, or I come up to him and I said, "Hey, Pastor, the Steelers are winning 24-3. You know?"
No.
And he looks at me, he says, "Thanks."
So you ruined the
I
game.
ruined it for him, but it was...
Ruined his lunch too.
It kind of makes me laugh to this day. So
I wonder if he went home and still watched it anyway.
I'm sure he did.
If they win, you watch it anyway.
I'm a fair weather fan at times. I'll
they lose,
record all
you
the
don't
games.
watch
If
it.
sometimes
Yep.
they lost 35-1, no,
Yeah, I'm not gonna watch
I'm
it.
not going to watch it.
Oh,
Well, as we're wrapping up our conversation here, tell me just even personally, what are you guys looking forward to? Because we've been talking about remembering, celebrating, but also advancing in this 50-year anniversary. So what are there one or two things that you're just like, hey, I'm expecting this in life, or I'm looking forward to God doing this? Like, what's on your heart?
spring that question on you.
Yeah. Last time we were with Denny Kramer, he had a prophecy for me, and he said God was happy with things, and he said anything that you put your hand to, you're going to be successful. And blessed. And then he kind of looked at me, and it's like, I don't think he liked giving me that word, because it just felt like, yeah. He said, now make sure you do good things. Like,
Yeah,
you know, like
yeah.
that. Like, God, let me interpret that. And I know that God, I still see that I get my ministry grounds is actually on the golf course so often, because I get to talk to people and share testimonies. Like I said, testimony of your dad sometimes, and I have this one Jewish friend, and he would always use the Lord's name in vain. And I'm like, well, you know, what if I would use Moses' name and such? And he like looked at me.
He's a Jewish friend.
Yeah.
And he said, you're right. And he did really change. And he's kind of a gruff guy, but there's men that come up and they'll ask me questions, or I can minister to people that you're not going to find in church.
Right.
So I don't know where that leads. I just really, we've been kind of in a time lately of kind of quietness. We're still serving God in our daily walk and ways, but you know, we're still kind of floating there. It doesn't help that we're half in Florida and half in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you guys at some point in the last 7 years, 8 years, how long has it been now? You became snowbirds.
It's been 11.
11 years.
12 years.
It was shorter at first, and then it got to be
Yes.
longer. Well,
But you can only tell by my gray hair, not by me.
I'll circle back around to the other question I just asked, but sharing that about becoming snowbirds and back and forth, how hard or how easy is it to come back and see? Because I know there's always new people, there's turnover in the church, and it's like you probably come back in the spring or the summer and somebody says, "Oh, are you a first-time visitor?"
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, what's that experience been like?
You throw COVID into the mix.
which was a hard couple
So
years
for-
for everybody.
Yeah.
For me, I walk in here and it's like, wow. Like, talk about seeing what God's going to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, wow, look what God's done and is doing, because it's so different.
Yeah.
I look around and all these new people. It's so great.
As much as we talk about celebrating the people that have been here 40 and 45, 48, 50 years, after COVID, it was almost like a new church.
Yes.
Like, we still had some
Yeah.
of those long-term faithful people,
Yeah.
but there was a lot that God brought new people in. Yeah.
So that's exciting.
It's like the flood that we had in Carnegie when it almost put my business out. And that was the year it went from being my father's company to my brother's and my company. Because it really just changed. And this is your church now.
Yeah.
Christ Church.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying by that.
But, you know, it's really important for the young people
It's a new
of this
generation.
church
Yeah.
to
You really
take
see
over,
that, yeah.
to be involved in ministry, to teach, you know, have home groups
Yeah.
and such. Because we've done it for a long time and it needs to be
Yep.
in
Raising up the next generation.
next generation, and really almost now the next generation after that. Because I was telling somebody at the church that anybody that's under 46 years old, I've at the church had been here.
Yep.
I've held them in as babies, played with them as little kids, taught them or whatever. And you know, what father or what older person doesn't want the young people to succeed and take
Yeah.
over?
Yep.
So I really see that as, and I've seen a bunch of younger people on stage and doing things,
Yeah.
and that excites me.
That's good.
Because that really is, you want the next generation to take over and go farther than you. And like, I don't know when it happens in your life, but your role shifts to, hey, I'm not so much the strength to do everything, but I'm the voice of wisdom and experience of how to do it. And so that's, you still need both generations together
You do.
to make anything lasting happen.
Because as you said, you learn things along the way,
Yep.
and that wisdom is really there to be there for the younger people.
Yep.
You know, there's like a couple of younger guys I know that I get to talk to. And, you know, it's like a mentoring relationship.
Yeah.
Not a home group one, but, you know, just in private, being able to speak into their lives, encourage them and such.
Yep. Well,
This will just be the open-ended, any last thoughts that you want to share or encourage people with? Anything that you want to say to the people that will be watching, thinking about, like, where's my spot in new life and what's next?
Don't worry about where your spot is. I don't know where my spot is right now. I just having that joyful expectation and keeping your eyes open and being ready when God says, okay, this is where I want you and you're going to do well here. Don't worry about it. Just jump in.
okay. Excellent. Any last thoughts, Robert?
No, I just wrote one thing down, kind of humorous, but the last sermon I preached,
Okay.
was about God hates sin. And I started that out, God hates sin. And I'm like, just bring that home. And then I looked at everybody and said, does everybody here, who hates sin? You got just a smattering of applause or, you know, some agreement. And I said, I think you're all liars because you're sinners. And really, my point being that God doesn't hate, it's not that he hates each individual sin, but he hates how sin hurts us.
Yeah.
And that's why he hates it. Not because so much, gee.
You're not offending his nature or his
Right,
character.
but
He's concerned about you.
He's concerned about us.
Yep.
And how when we sin, we hurt ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't hurt God. And Jesus paid the price for all of our sins.
Yeah.
But, you know, that was the favorite sermon I preached, the one I can still remember. But it was a funny moment.
Oh, that's good.
I have a guy that more often than not, he comes up to me after church on Sundays and says, that was one of the best sermons you ever preached. And then I realized, like, it could also be one of the worst. He doesn't tell me where it lands. Oh, well, thanks guys for sitting with me and for sharing. I appreciate just the years of experience and the wisdom and the stories to share, and just getting to share even some laughs looking back on Dad's life and be encouraged by that. So, and
Happy anniversary, New Life Fellowship.
oh, thank you. Yeah, if we had our towels, we'd wave them right now. Yeah,
I was hoping to get a towel.
I'll make sure that happens before we leave.
All right.
So also thank you guys for watching and just join in, helping us to remember, to celebrate, and to advance, and just know that God is faithful and He loves you. God bless you. Thanks for joining.